With the power of the moon and stars, let this potion be a slumber charm, Abby Garrison said, as magic sparked from her fingertips and onto the wooden spoon she used to stir her potion. The thin, herb-infused liquid in her copper pot went from a pale green to a deep midnight blue. She smiled down at her creation, pleased with herself. Her newly developed sleep potion had worked perfectly. Abby! The door to her studio swung open, and in walked her husband, Clay Garrison. Clay? What are you doing here? Abby put her wooden spoon down and wiped her hands on her apron, frowning in confusion. Aren't you supposed to be bottling today? Her husband was the brewmaster at her family's brewery in town. The fact he'd come all the way out to her father's property, where Abby made her magical potions and soaps, was highly unusual. I was, but there's a major problem with my tanks. I need you to come down to the brewery so we can test your batches. If they aren't ready, we're going to have a major problem supplying our vendors with product. I was going to give them at least another week, she said, already untying her apron. What happened? Are all of your batches ruined? All of them. He held the door open for her and followed her out. Abby stopped in her tracks and turned to her husband, taking in the worry lines around his eyes. She pressed one hand to his chest and the other to his cheek. Clay, what happened to the tanks? He ground his teeth together and closed his eyes as he nodded. One of the new ones imploded and ruined the other 4. We're going to have to replace them all. Abby's heart sank all the way to her toes as her limbs went cold. No, she whispered, fearing the worst. Was anyone hurt? His eyes flew open and he quickly shook his head. No one was in the brewhouse when it happened. Thank the gods. But what about replacing the tanks? Dad doesn't have that kind of money just lying around. Her heart was nearly beating out of her chest now. Her father owned the brewery, and while they made a good living, it would cost over 6 figures to replace what had been lost. He covered her hand that was still cupping his cheek, and then brought it to his lips to kiss it gently. Don't worry, Abs. Insurance will cover the damage. Our biggest problem now is having product to supply to our accounts. That's why we need to go test your experiments. If it looks promising, we need to get started on the marketing and notifications of a change in our lineup. That's a lot of pressure, she said, falling into step beside him. The batches in the backup tanks were her first try at brewing beer. Sure, she'd learned a lot growing up as a brewmaster's daughter, but watching and learning wasn't the same as doing. My batches could be terrible. Clay grabbed her hand and squeezed. They could, he agreed. They could also be delicious. We just won't know until we try. She sucked in a deep breath. And if they are terrible? What then? Then we'll be behind for at least a month and the business will take a pretty significant financial hit. But we'll get through it. Abby eyed him and frowned. The brewery isn't in the position to lose a month's worth of income right now, not after the new roof and the upgrades to the tanks we did this year. Plus, production will be limited if we're just using the backup tanks until the others are replaced. That sounds more like 2 months behind. A muscle ticked in Clay's jaw. I know, but we'll find a way to work it out. She nodded and paused at the back door of her childhood home. Hold on, we need to let Claire know where I'll be. Clay opened the back door to her father's house, and the two of them walked in together. Hey there, sweetheart, Clay said, striding across the living room and picking up their 2-year-old, who'd been playing on a blanket with her pile of stuffed animals. Lynette squealed as her father picked her up and spun her around the way he always did when he got home from work. Well, this is a surprise, Claire said, rising from her spot on the couch. What brings you out here in the middle of the day, Clay? He gave her a quick smile. Just came to grab Abby. I need her for a couple of hours at the brewery.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.